On this podcast, we talk about gun stuff a lot. We take a little bit of time to go into deep technical things related to guns, and we talk about business a little bit. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about gun business. Welcome back to T-Rex Talk. Today, I have a guest. You may not know my guest's name, but you probably know about GrabAGun. GrabAGun is an online retailer, and Marc Nemati is the CEO, and he's joining us on the podcast today to talk about GrabAGun. GrabAGun's been around for a while, but it's been in the news a bit recently, so we're going to cover that as well. So, Marc, thanks for coming on, and it's good to talk to you again.
Yeah, thanks, Isaac. Thanks for having me today.
It's a very interesting thing, but I'd love to kind of go over a little bit why you're in the news. You just had an IPO for GrabAGun, and you were traded for how long ago was that? You've had a week or two of trading at this point?
Yes, we were listed on the New York Stock Exchange on the 16th, so today, about 2 weeks in. So we're still pretty fresh to the public markets.
And you've been in the news because Donald Trump Jr. was involved, and so a lot of there's just so much news coverage of what a Trump does. It doesn't even have to be the president. It could just be Donald Trump Jr. Like Trump-backed stock trades, crashes, doom. Like there's got to be dramatic headlines if a Trump has been involved. So not only did you guys trade on the stock market for a couple of weeks, but you got a huge amount of press, and a lot of it has been negative because Trump was involved. A Trump was involved, but I'd love to dig into that a little bit. But first, can you explain to us a little bit about GrabAGun, what it is that you guys do, and then I also want to ask how you got started, and then how you personally got into the firearm space, because that's not your main professional background.
No, yeah. So yeah, happy to kind of give you the whole overview here. So GrabAGun, we started about 15 years ago, and it kind of ties in with my background. So I was never really like a super gun crazy person. You know, I like guns just like the next guy pretty much. But my background is in software. So back in 2010, me and my partners, now we're looking at some gun websites, some gun retail sites, and we knew there had to be a better way to purchase a firearm. My background, I was working for IBM doing software development for, Fortune 500 retailers. So think like the Walmarts and Targets of the world and stuff like that. And so these big multi-billion-dollar companies coming for us to help build up their e-commerce infrastructure to help make their buying experience for their shoppers better. So when we noticed that there wasn't a similar look and feel or easy flow to purchase a firearm, obviously firearms are regulated goods, so there's an extra step in how you acquire a firearm with FFL paperwork and background check and all that stuff. So we figured if we applied technology, a lot of the e-commerce expertise that I had at IBM, and as well as other technical expertise, we could potentially change, and we kind of have the way people shop for firearms. So GrabAGun has grown from literally a garage for guys with really no capital to start. And we just started out of a garage like any kind of American dream, and we grew it to about $100 million in revenue annually. And then we took that dream and we took it to the New York Stock Exchange and went public. So now there's a lot more stuff we have to deal with in terms of media coverage, kind of as you mentioned, dealing with investors now in the stock, and a lot of negative media coverage again on those things. But we have a really long-term strategy on how we're going to go to market and how we're going to grow. Our plan here isn't just to do what we have done. It's really to massively expand, double, triple, quadruple our revenues pretty quickly. It's really more about guns, more than just about guns. It's kind of about freedom and how people shop. So it's kind of why we build what we did.
Yeah, you have some great statements about the Second Amendment on the website, as on your About Us page, reason why your company exists. But what does your company do? I know this is kind of a devil's advocate question. Like, what is the purpose of a middleman? Like, why can't people just buy from just direct from the manufacturers? I say that because obviously we are also a middleman. We also have a warehouse full of stuff. But I think most of our listeners here are familiar with the firearm purchasing process. Most of them are firearm owners, and most of them have. We've talked about suppressors quite a bit at T-Rex. Most of them understand how Silencer Shop changed how you could buy a suppressor with their kiosks and the digital fingerprinting process, and just streamlined that whole process. What is it that GrabAGun did to help people with the firearm acquisition, purchase, and regulatory compliance bit?
Yeah, so it's really twofold. So what you as a customer or anybody on the outside looking in sees is our e-commerce platform, which we spend a lot of time on that, making the UI easy to use, kind of very intuitive. I mean, we've been called the Amazon of guns, which is an interesting moniker that has stuck through the IPO process. And partially is because we know that people know how to shop on Amazon. So might as well build that kind of environment and experience for them on a firearms website as well. But really, most of the meat, where the tech actually comes into play is on the back end. So we work with a lot of wholesalers and manufacturers over the last decade and a half. Many of them now have various EDI components, API components. We help several of them develop those to integrate specifically with how GrabAGun believes we can get all that data transfer. And then they have also then leveraged that with their other customers. And over the years, the industry has adopted more tech-forward approaches on data transfer and getting information back and forth. Additionally, we've built our own regulatory compliance system. So as you're well aware, there's a lot of A&D books. For every gun that you touch has to come in, go out. 4473 processes for individuals. I actually went to DC some 10 years ago. We got one of the first variants on like digital storage of 4473s, digital signatures. And so now there are businesses that provide that. We never monetized that. We did it purely for ourselves to streamline how we move product, make sure it's always compliant. So that way there's less, it's not as error prone. So a lot of that is supply chain, and then compliance. And then now we're applying a lot of AI stuff. So one differentiator I think we have is how we purchase our product that we list on the site. So we have a plethora of various vendors that we use and how we deliver product. And we want to make sure that we always have in inventory the stuff that people are looking for, what's in demand. So we leverage a lot of consumer and data analytics, a lot of AI to make sure that we have product available. We have the pricing set too. So a lot of that pricing is dynamic pricing based off market conditions. So making sure that the customer has something that they want to look for and then has it at a price that they're willing to transact at.
What's kind of your overall mentality? When you went and you got that variance for storing digital paperwork, you were kind of cracking open this, completely closed off thing. And other people have that now. Other people use that now. Within the software world, it feels like there's three different mentalities for how to do, pioneer that kind of thing. And one is the open source approach where the rising tide lifts all ships. So anything that you can do to simplify things, reduce friction for anybody, even your competitors, you do it. And then the other way is actually IBM is kind of the ones who have made maybe some of the best like patent everything and then license patents to people, really own and demonstrate mastery of some of this stuff and then license it to people. Or the Elon Musk approach, which is patents are for the weak, just go so much faster than anybody else that you always have a 10-mile head start. Like where do you personally sit kind of in there with some of this stuff that you're developing?
I mean, we're developing mostly for ourselves to streamline stuff and make it faster. It's mostly about efficiency. We're not a software business like, the IBMs of the world or even Elon and Tesla. So we develop that tech that we know we need for our use cases. And I think people see that we've kind of developed some of that stuff and they'll start working on it on their own, but we keep it in-house and keep it,
right.
Again, we haven't monetized any of that stuff, and it's just for our own benefit of efficiency and streamlining the overall process, which then kind of bakes down into the customer experience, customer satisfaction, pricing, and overhead, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, so we have rolled all of our own software in-house for basically all of our production and warehousing and inventory. Basically, we have our own ERP at this point. And that is not as deliberate as it probably should have done. We just keep talking about how hard it would be to implement somebody else's ERP and keep building the tools that we need just to keep operations running. And next thing you know, we're like, well, we're pretty much... we've pretty much done the thing that everyone says is the worst thing to do. Nobody can decide whether implementing somebody else's ERP or writing your own is the worst thing to do, but everyone agrees that it's only the second worst thing to do than the other one. So what has your experience been working with some of these other companies, and no names, but implementing, taking your software and tying it into other people's systems and trying to get people to where they have something that works with your API or have an API that works with your software? What has been some of that process for you guys? I
mean, as you can imagine, in this industry, that's not a very thought about topic. So when you go ask somebody to do that, especially 5-10 years ago, they were like, we don't have it. We were like, well, we'll help you build it, or we'll give you some requirements. And obviously everybody's different and how they come to that approach. Some of them want to build out something that's scalable. Other ones, want to still do stuff on FTP, which is, a technology built in the 70s, and that's their new latest, greatest
classic stuff.
Integration piece. So, we're happy to work with all of those, and really with all of the various partners that we have, provided that we can get some sort of minimal level of confidence in terms of how stuff is going to be stable and confirmations. So when it came to software development and integrations with vendors, we've been always super flexible. We're happy to help where needed. Several of them don't have internal development teams. So they either contract third party. So we've worked with those third parties to kind of help define a data flow, an overall architecture of what we're looking for, and then let them kind of do it on their own to make sure it provides them access, obviously, for what we're looking for, but then also for their other customers or for other intent that they have internally. So a lot of that has just been communication with those vendors to tell them what we want. And as we've grown bigger, it makes it easy for them to be like, okay, we do want to sign you up, so we're willing to spend this money on tech that we haven't normally done to foster the relationship.
Yeah. Now, here's a potentially awkward question. Why is it, do you think, that the gun industry, and there's obviously outliers, but the gun industry in general feels a little bit stuck in amber? There is still a lot of faxing that remains, people running FTP servers and software. Why does the gun industry feel a little bit behind? Now, it probably doesn't feel behind to everybody, but why does it feel like it's behind where a lot of business activity is?
Yeah, I think there's a couple answers to that. The first one I'll say is there's no real ability to exit. So if you look at just software in general, these startups that start in Silicon Valley, they'll develop some sort of product. They'll either sell it to another software company, to private equity, go public. So they have a means to an end when they're developing new tech and new software. So why would you be innovative and create some software for an industry where nobody has any capital to buy you or to expand or to give you any access to capital for massive and hyper growth? So I think that access to capital has been really restrictive on innovation, especially when it comes from the technology side. Secondly, is I think sometimes there's a mentality, if it's not broke, don't fix it. A lot of these companies have been around, several of them for decades or even hundreds of years, and they're used to doing catalog stuff and working with that older customer base, and that's been good. We're trying to obviously modernize what we do because there's a modern shopper and a modern buyer. Again, that Amazon-esque approach lends credence more to the millennial and Gen Z shopper, which I do think people still don't necessarily give enough emphasis to on how the industry is shifting. Some people believe that this younger generation is kind of running away from the Second Amendment. I believe a complete opposite of that. So that's why we've spent a lot of time, obviously, on the technology side of things.
Yeah. Now, to what extent is that lack of access to capital? How much of that is, do you think, just kind of you get a little bit locked away in your sort of old-fashioned business? It's really interesting talking to the Beretta guys, because Beretta has guys on their team who are extremely current guys who are really focused on market trends and current manufacturing and so forth. But Beretta also is like, we've been around for 500 years. We're, the Beretta home office back in Italy has been in the same place for 5 centuries now. It's outlasted every country on the planet. So they are justified in having a little bit of a very stable outlook on things. How much of that is, do you think, just kind of getting locked into a basic business model? And how much of it is a cultural thing where various capital firms or banks or financial services companies or technology companies just don't want to touch firearms, either because there's the regulatory side or there's the perceived political incorrectness? How much of that's cultural?
I think a lot of it's cultural. Mm-hmm. I mean, most software, again, is created out in California. A lot of those companies start up there. Big schools that, have software development, big science schools, they're not really pro Second Amendment. So I think a lot of that's that way. Again, that's kind of why we built this and this uncancelable platform. Right. But I do think that's kind of why us going public and us having this access to capital now allows us to make some of those strategic acquisitions. So, our goal going forward for growth is a lot of M&A activity. That includes obviously other e-commerce retailers, but also software too. So, this big chunk of money we have, about $120 million we got to go do some real damage with, is really a war chest. And I use the word war on purpose because I believe that we are at a war with a lot of anti-Second Amendment people, right? Do you know about debanking and Operation Choke Point?
Yes, yeah.
So now, we have more money with this than we've ever obviously had in the past. And so when the bank said no, now we have our own money to go do some stuff, and people are not necessarily happy that we have listed and we are now a public company on the New York Stock Exchange and have all this access to capital. A lot of people who don't believe in Second Amendment don't believe in our right to protect ourselves. And so now we're using this high finance, I guess you could call it, as a weapon against a lot of this stuff that we've had to deal with in the past. And so a lot of people don't want us to be here. But, we're here for the long haul. We're not going anywhere. Obviously, we could probably talk a little more about the stock. I'm sure we will. I look at it all the time.
It's intriguing, yeah.
But really, I'm focused on the long-term game here, and how we get these people out that are playing games, I think, with our stock. There's obviously a lot of shorting going on. Whether all of that is above board, I don't necessarily believe that it is.
Right.
We're kind of looking into some of that stuff. But the main, I guess, goal here is that we as a company are focused on scaling, and that scale of fundamental business, which we are already, will allow us to deliver more freedom, if you will, and really stick it to those people who don't believe in us and don't believe in the Second Amendment. And now we have access to capital to really prove them wrong.
Yeah. And that's been part of, I mentioned before, not implementing somebody else's ERP, but along the way, we've rolled a lot of our own software specifically because we didn't want to be cancelable. We'd watched people get kicked off of Shopify, and, we're like a lot of different companies, we're not even eligible to be on Salesforce or various other places. We've been banned from PayPal, and we have been not entirely debanked, but we've had to change insurance companies and insurance underwriters several times. We've never had a bank yank us, but we've had a couple of banks tell us that we should please leave soon. So, even a little holster company in Nowheresville, Tennessee gets a focus, kind of directed at us in some of these different places. So, I think that this is a really important place to play. Now, I understand from a financial perspective what it means to have publicly traded stock and to be listed on the New York Stock Exchange it means we can buy and sell parts of the company. What does it mean for being taken seriously? It gives you access to capital, but what else does it give you from a cultural perspective? What else does it give you ammo-wise in going out and taking some cultural stands for the Second Amendment?
Yeah, I mean, with that access to capital, also access to, our public stock as a currency allows us to do a lot of M&A stuff. Which really will grow on how we, I think, shift that culture and, again, more modernizing. So, again, our path here and our growth strategy is to modernize this whole industry, even by acquiring, businesses that maybe not be modern. In the past, also, I think kind of what you're talking about culture, we haven't done a great job because we were much smaller and didn't have much capital to really work with a lot of these groups like Second Amendment Foundation, NRA, Firearms Policy Coalition. But now we have access to capital. Definitely want to start stepping into some of that culture stuff and working with a lot of those guys to do that. But the fact that a gun retailer is now traded on the New York Stock Exchange, I think, is a big shift in the cultural movement, because now the people that have invested in us, our shareholders, are people that are, a lot of them are pro Second Amendment, pro gun. They want to see a business like ours succeed in a country who culturally over the last, let's say, decade or two, or however long you want to say, hasn't really been pro Second Amendment, largely, especially the big money and financial stuff. So I think us purely being listed 2 weeks ago was a big cultural shift. Now, again, that's just the beginning. We're still fighting this war against the rest of these guys, and it's a long road. But it was definitely a big step for us. Very proud of the whole team at GrabAGun and what we've done over the last decade and a half to get to where we are and to ring that bell. I mean, ringing that bell in that city was pretty surreal. Like, it wasn't lost on me that we were in New York City and we were a gun company who took over a giant banner outside the stock exchange, inside the stock exchange were GrabAGun logos everywhere. I mean, it was pretty cool to do it in a place like that.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, if my memory serves, you were only a few blocks away from where the NRA used to do rifle matches. Like, it's not that long ago that guns were totally acceptable and cool inside New York City, and the New York pistol and rifle clubs would actually do international matches, like not probably within rifle shot of Wall Street. So it's cool that you're there again. Now, is there any kind of gatekeeping? I noticed that you didn't do a more traditional IPO. You went through a SPAC, which has been a pretty common way for a lot of IPOs to actually run over the last 5 or so years. Was there any sort of gatekeeping from folks, and that's the reason that you went that route?
I think obviously a traditional IPO route is a possibility, definitely much more difficult. We were approached by the Columbia team with Omid and his group because they believed in the same thing we believe in. So they believed in the Second Amendment rights, and they wanted to use the public markets as a way to defend and attack those who are anti-Second Amendment. So, they came and sought us out, and we worked with them and to eventually, have one of the most successful SPACs in the history of SPACs, which is pretty ridiculous, again, considering the industry that we're in. And then there's been hundreds and hundreds of SPACs that have transacted, but that we were successful, and not just by like a small margin. I mean, the average, I don't want to get too into the weeds in terms of how SPACs work, but there's what's called a redemption, which is how money comes out of the SPAC before it actually transacts. And those typically have about a 90 to 95% redemption rate, meaning if you have $100 million in there, when the SPAC IPO is 2 years in advance, 90% of that is gone by the time the target company IPOs. Well, we had pretty much no redemptions. So we got the full amount of that trust. And again, that speaks to how we have this giant war chest to go do stuff with. But that's because there's a lot of people that believe, and that's back to the culture thing of, what we believe in the Second Amendment and believe that we have a space on Wall Street.
Yeah. So it's going to be interesting to watch that roll out. But, sorry, I was cutting you off.
Yeah, so just SPACs in general are definitely one of the many tools to go public, and it's obviously one there's a lot of, every SPAC has known volatility, I think, is why we're kind of seeing what we've seen the last couple of weeks. But again, we're not really too concerned with some of that stuff. We have long-term vision here. So, but definitely thankful to Omid and the Colombier team for getting us to where we are today.
Yeah, I think the SEC changed the rules about SPACs recently, like a few years ago, and I think it was related to Donald Trump Sr. Was it Truth Social? Is that
Truth Social? Yeah.
Yeah, and so people are like, "Oh, Donald Trump's making too much money with this. Got to change rules." So you have a very successful SPAC, and Donald Trump Jr. is associated with it. So many of the headlines are about him. They're not actually very much about you.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Like they obviously talk bad about a negative because they have their bias, obviously, but they're saying, like, I mean, they haven't made their money on it. They're shareholders and they're still in here, so there's no transactions happening. They're not like they're taking a bunch of money off the table. So I think that's definitely a part of the media trying to put a spin on things to frame it very negatively. But Don is a very good partner of ours. He's on our board. He's in this for the long haul too. So it's what you hear and see on the headlines, I'm sure you're quite aware, is not really the true story most of the time, or at least not all of it. A lot of stuff taken out of context.
Yeah, generally not. Yeah, no, people. I'm seeing people who have never commented on the stock market have to weigh in on this story because Donald Trump Jr. is involved, and so it has to be commented on.
Expert. Well, everybody's an expert, right? Keyboard warriors. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I remember. I think was it some of the early .com companies that used SPACs back in the 90s? Like, it was a pretty new IPO strategy back in the 90s, and anyway, it was reminding me of some of those things. Not that I can remember any of them in particular. Also, I'm not an expert on this financial side. But can we talk about the board for a minute? Because you have some heavy hitters on your board. Donald Trump Jr., obviously someone who's been. It's kind of interesting. The media has painted him as being a really serious gun nut. And he certainly has showed up at SHOT Show, is knowledgeable about weapons, field ethos, talks about reviews weapons, and talks about hunting and so forth very openly and unashamedly and unabashedly. Has he had any involvement in firearm companies in the past? Is this his first foray into like actual retail or actual firearm marketing and sales?
I mean, I know he's partnered with several different firearm manufacturers in terms of a lot of different stuff. He's obviously, a real bona fide outdoorsman. So he lives and breathes not just the hunting and shooting, but also, fishing and all that. So he's really entrenched and understands, the mentality of the customer base because he is one. So, and then obviously he has a huge following for several reasons. He's very smart business-wise. He runs Trump International Organization. So he checks a lot of boxes in terms of understanding business, understanding the firearm consumer, understanding firearms in general, being an outdoorsman, being very avid, and very pro-Second Amendment. So definitely a huge benefit to our board. Yeah.
And then you also have Chris Cox. Chris Cox is famously, I would say most famously, the head of the NRA's legislative group, but not recently. This was in the past, and he clashed with Wayne and left the NRA. That's also kind of famous. And he left the NRA before a lot of the scandals happened. So the NRA is definitely like a litmus test for a lot of Second Amendment people. Like, if you think the NRA is doing good, serious work, then you're probably new to this sphere. And if you've been here a while, then you have a different opinion of the NRA, which is kind of interesting. So Chris Cox is a guy who is he was there a while back when there was a lot more productive work being done. And so, he's been but he's been involved for a very long time. So he's an interesting person to have as a board member. For a pure retail operation, he doesn't make sense. For somebody that has more of a cultural perspective and a company that has more on its to-do list than just the bottom line, just selling firearms, he makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, so it's definitely part of our overall growth strategy. As part of that culture stuff you talk about. He definitely has ingrained a lot in the legislative side of things, knows a lot of people in D.C., understands how gun regulation works, the overall process on how to get stuff done, more so than just this is a list of what we want or a list of demands, but actually on how to take action to get some or all of those things met from a legislative perspective. So he's definitely a very important person to have on the board, as well as all his connections within the industry. I mean, everybody has gone to him or people like him to help when there's issues with either their product, and clashing with whatever legislation or some government entity. So he brings a wealth of knowledge and a big cultural fit, obviously.
Yeah, for sure. We emailed last year, mostly talking about strategy for this year, political and legislative strategy for this year, with Trump being in office and stuff to do before the midterms. And he's a very, very sharp guy. You've got some other folks on your board as well. I was going to say Blake Masters is somebody that I know. I think most people know him as a political candidate, but I remember I read his book that he wrote with Peter Thiel, and he's got a background in software and business that is pretty significant. What are some of the things that...
So he's obviously very pro 2A, which is, again, one of the requirements to more or less be on our board. He ran for politics, yes, and he's the protege of Peter Thiel, so he has a lot of understanding of kind of business and startups and software and technology. So that's kind of where, we cross that line of being a software entrenched business, but also being a pro-gun business. So his expertise in that area is also very different than a lot of different people, because it's very nuanced in what we're doing.
Yeah, I will say I appreciated the book. The book 0 to 1 that he worked on with Peter Thiel is a very fascinating read about disruptive technologies and business stuff. But when I looked at his Wikipedia page the other day, just to remind myself, like, what else has he done? Wikipedia starts out by saying that he's a conspiracy theorist, which is, I feel like, pretty high praise. I personally do not want a Wikipedia page about me, but if Wikipedia is listening, I would like to admit that I am a conspiracy theorist. Please put that first.
Oh, wow, yeah. And, the last 4 years, there's been a lot of 4 or 5 years, a lot of conspiracy theories have managed their way to become truth, so...
Nobody has a better track record than the Wikipedia named conspiracy theorists at the moment. So, it's pretty high praise. What are some of the things? You've mentioned that you want some significant mergers and acquisitions activity with the war chest. There's probably a number of legislative things, strategic moves that can be done there. Is there anything that you want to talk about ahead of time, or how open do you want to be with some of that stuff on a podcast 2 weeks after the IPO?
Yeah, 2 weeks is pretty short turnaround. What I can say is that we are aggressively looking into this M&A strategy. We've had a lot of conversations with a lot of different potential acquisitions. All of these are very accretive to our business model and revenue generating. We're looking at companies with revenues, in the tens of millions to companies 400 or 500 million. So there's a lot of room for growth in terms of our overall business through a lot of this M&A strategy. Especially right now, I'm sure you're aware the headwinds this industry is kind of facing in terms of sales. Yeah. Which is actually a good time for us to be a buyer in this industry, a good time for our shareholders, because when you can buy stuff at a discount, long term it'll really blossom. So that's why we're getting pretty aggressive with what we're doing. Obviously, kind of back to the point we talked about earlier about no ability to exit. So there's a lot of these good, profitable, revenue generating businesses that have been in the family for a while, maybe have no succession plan. They want a way to get out. Again, there's no private equity money. People that just want some reason to exit, and now we're here with our big checkbook and public currency. So adding them to the ecosystem overall, and if they want to expand and grow with us, is something that we can easily do. So we're being very, very prudent and very methodical on how we judge these businesses to make sure that we're spending our money wisely, because it's a lot of it, and we have a real opportunity, like I said, for some growth here. So we want to make sure we're not jumping the gun, I guess, pun intended. And I
will say, like, I personally am very on the one hand, it's very interesting. But I am very personally unexcited about centralizing too much of this industry. However, if we're going into tough times, if there are headwinds, if the Trump slump that we are having now looks like the Trump slump from 4 years ago, there are a number of businesses that will struggle to the point where, your M&A activity is not going to be necessarily taking advantage of people or centralizing or putting all of our eggs in one basket. It will be salvaging and saving a bunch of folks who otherwise might not make it. There were a bunch of people that, very small businesses for the most part, but they really, really struggled, and not all of them made it from 2016 all the way to 2020. So, it is going to be interesting times.
Yeah, and I'm sure you go to SHOT Show every year, and you've been to the main floor, and you see all those big brands. But then if you ever go down to the basement, right, you see where there's...
I actually love the basement, yeah.
So there's like this feel of like emerging categories. You have these, a booth with two guys in a dream, right, and where they're getting started. So, I think there's a lot of value that can be created by having the right industry consolidator. And we want to be that consolidator really to help adjacent offerings achieve this level of growth that likely isn't, they're not able to do. So we've built a lot of obviously tech infrastructure. We've talked about a lot of software. We're working on how we do distribution. We're looking at different options for payment. So we can take a lot of these different acquisitions, really plug them in, and create an even higher value asset. Again, for our shareholder base, it's good because we're creating accretive value and a benefit to shareholders. But in terms of the industry, like, we're not just here buying logos to juice headlines. That doesn't really help anybody.
Right. Yeah.
Our play is really to unlock this trapped value and really bring best in class operators into our platform, which we've proven can already scale. So
yeah. And at T-Rex, we have really benefited. I would not call us fully vertically integrated the way that somebody like Amazon is, but the fact that we have warehouse and inventory and fulfillment and manufacturing and testing and software development, the fact that we have so many different capabilities in-house, so that stuff that's being developed over here is going to dovetail perfectly with other aspects of the business has been huge. And so as you find a lot of these decentralized players who are pretty narrowly focused, and seeing that there is an opportunity for them to perfectly be in alignment with somebody else that's on the other side of the SHOT Show basement exhibition hall, that's the kind of thing that is really exciting to me. That's the kind of thing that I feel like is really strategic stuff that can happen.
Yeah, and then that's kind of what we're looking to do here. So
yeah. We're going to be at SHOT Show this year. I don't know how we managed to skip the basement, but somehow last year we were on the top floor, the fifth floor, which was kind of a new company space, and somehow we ended up in Caesars Forum this coming year. So I figured we would be in the basement with folks, but somehow we skipped that step, and I don't know how. But the basement of SHOT Show is a fascinating place. Some of the booths are just importers. All they're doing is importing like gas station knives. But some of the booths are really cool, innovative stuff, and you fully expect to see those guys in a much bigger booth upstairs in a few years. And it's a nifty place to meet people and see newcomers into the space.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So what are some of the things that you've got to do immediately? You're looking into people who are shorting your stock, who are potentially possibly meddling with stuff now that you're publicly traded and all of your everything is publicly visible. Are there any things in particular that you got to look out for or watch out for as opposed to 2 weeks ago?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's been really crazy to watch what's going on here. You talked about the shorts and things of that nature, but no, again, our focus is on the long term. So now that we have all this access, we're really trying to build out the team as well. So obviously through M&A, we're going to hire some good individuals, but also looking to kind of expand our team. Marketing wise, especially, I haven't done a lot of marketing organically over the last several years. Hasn't really been much of our focus. So we're going to probably look into doing that here pretty soon. But yeah, right now my goal is, to focus on kind of what we've done before. We're a fundamentally sound business. What's crazy is the only thing that's changed in the last 2 weeks is that we have an extra $120 million. Outside of that, we're still the same business. So it's crazy to see a lot of this panic going on. But I mean, that's part of the deal. You get some panic in my inbox, but for every one of those, I got 2 more people yelling at me, telling me to keep my head down, ride the storm, and build something great. And that, to me, that's really a signal.
Stop going on podcasts. Yeah.
I mean, they got to help spread the word, right? So, but there's a lot of noise, and we're doing what we've always done, and that's stay focused on the work at hand. So,
yeah. So $120 million is an awful lot of money for the gun industry, but it's not that much in the bigger, broader cultural war that is going on. Mike Bloomberg occasionally just hands $120 million checks to different anti-gun freedom groups on a pretty regular basis. So there's a lot to do, and there's enough to do that war chest is very impressive. I don't mean to belittle it in any way, but it doesn't go as far as we need to go culturally. There still is lots and lots and lots of work for all the other gun companies and all the other Second Amendment groups to continue pushing and pulling and moving the ball down the field.
Yeah, it's a good start, I would say. Obviously, it's a lot of money for us to be able to go do some stuff. But really, the end of it is it's going to be the people, the individuals, the customers, the shareholders, the firearm advocates, buy more guns, buy more ammo, grow. And that's kind of what's been happening. I think that's what part of this cultural shift over the last several years. I think a lot since 2020. I think we're getting a lot more individuals that are pro-gun, maybe not so much at let's say the political level, but there's a lot of people that I'm never buying a gun, that bought a gun to protect themselves. And the more that people understand how to use firearms, to train and use and protect, they're going to continue to kind of chip away at that cultural war. So,
yeah. There's another thing that you have access to as you grow, which is data. You have an opportunity, and this is something that I've talked about with a number of different firearm companies. T-Rex is not the Amazon of the gun world. We're trying to have a very not narrowly, but carefully curated list of products. But we still have, I think I mentioned this to you last time I talked, we have a hopefully we have a statistically significant sample of the different places where we're working and can kind of see trends in the industry over time. But you have a much bigger swath of data. You have a much wider set of customers and vendors. And so that's something that you and actually other people on your board have a lot of experience doing, some of that data analytics stuff to plan some of these moves. Is that the kind of thing that you would be open to talking about a little bit more publicly? Because I've worked in a lot of industries. The firearm industry is the most quiet and secretive of all the industries. SHOT Show is the trade show and everybody is there, but there is far less information in the NSSF journals than like other industry papers and journals that I'm aware of from other industries.
Yeah, so I think data is big. We've used data a lot, obviously, as we build that customer experience. Think, product recommendations, a lot of how we do have quite a large product catalog. So when you're an individual who doesn't know exactly what you're looking for, how we put that product in front of you to help you find what you're looking for is all driven by data. Without knowing anything about you, we're just going to suggest random things. But as we come to understand how you use our website, how you shop, when you buy, what you buy, all that stuff, even if it's anonymized, you don't need to know who you are. We can give you better recommendations to help you find that product, help save you time, save you money. And then it's also kind of the beauty of, we're in this AI space race, so to speak. You have a lot of these big companies that are spending all these billions and trillions of dollars to come up with these massive and better AI models to do stuff. Well, now is the ability for us to leverage that. And so if you look at ChatGPT or Grok or whatever it is, and you go ask it a question, well, it gives you that answer because of the data that is consumed across the open internet or whatever. But because the firearms industry doesn't have a lot of data, especially not public data, I mean, really the best metric everybody uses when you're trying to judge firearm sales is NICS background checks.
Right. Yeah.
Outside of that, everybody's like, that's it. That's all we know. So if we can get more data on how people shop and what they're looking for, whether it's across our website or across others, and then start really processing that heavily with AI, one that allows us to do better forecasting on on the inventory purchasing, helps us, drive better customer experience. Additionally, I mean, I'm not a manufacturer, but there's been manufacturers in the past that always ask us, like, what's the customer saying about this? What's happening here? What's happening there?
Yeah.
And by the time they get that information 2, 3, 4 months down the line, if it's not what these bigger guys have scheduled their production lines for and they get it wrong, then all of a sudden they got this big swath of product that nobody wants. And so with data, I think, and really leveraging AI and how you process that data, I think we can help other people within the industry, especially down the chain, such as manufacturers, help them understand what it is that their customers are looking for in a much smaller time window than they've experienced in the past.
Yeah. Yeah. Obviously, advertisers want very specific, conversion data and stuff like that. But I know for me personally, oftentimes I have questions that could be answered by very non-sensitive data. Like, what are the trends right now when it comes to rifle optics? Are people moving away from red dot magnifier combos and they're moving over to other things? Like, what are people generally thinking about? That would be, maybe that's just my own curiosity, but that is the kind of stuff where I do wish there were a better, slightly more open sharing component to this industry. Because I think there's a lot of people who would benefit from that. There's some people who are so laser focused on their area that they're not thinking about what those ramifications are. And one of the things that we've seen at SHOT Show over the last, I think I've been going for 7, 8 years now. There definitely has been a trend where it's been less about hunting and outdoor activities, and it's been much more tactical. So way more booths, even booths that don't sell night vision and body armor and stuff like that. As decoration, their booth has a mannequin wearing body armor and night vision. And things are openly a lot more tactical, and people are talking more about these things than they did even 10 years ago. There's probably all kinds of data that shows that trend much more accurately and specifically than just like counting mannequins at SHOT Show. And it would be great to have a wider conversation about that stuff without exposing customer data, without getting into like this specific shotgun is selling twice as good as it was a year ago, and what does that mean? Without looking too much at specifics and outliers, just general trends. I feel like there's got to be a way where we can safely and more openly talk about that stuff in the industry.
Yeah. No, I'm a big proponent in data and leveraging it for really for everything that drives our business. I mean, huge consumer of data and how we go to market. And I think the more data that we can share within the industry amongst each other is better for everybody, especially the consumer. So,
Yeah. I mean, it would be kind of anecdotal, but you've been plugged into the gun industry now for 10, 12,
15
years, 15 years.
Yeah,
what are some of the trends that you've noticed just personally?
I mean, I would say over the last 2 years, the biggest trend that we've seen is like this resurgence of lever guns, which is pretty good.
Yeah.
Like you couldn't get rid of a gun, and all you had was Henry, who made these golden cool guns, and then now everybody else and their brother is making these lever guns, which I think is pretty cool. But now you have the shift into these tactical lever guns, which I think is also pretty awesome, and it's kind of an interesting way to think about stuff. But
I have such mixed feelings about it because I like the old ones, and I don't like. But I also love a lever gun. It's a great thing to put a suppressor on. Yes. I'm very inconsistent on this point.
That's definitely a fun one that I've seen there. I mean, we sell a lot of 9mm carry pistols. There's so many different ones of those, and every 6 months somebody comes out with a new one that's smaller and holds more rounds or has less recoil, and then you take that and you throw a compensator on it. So there's a lot of like building upon these bases and kind of growing and trying to make it to where the consumer can accessorize more.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a fascinating space, and it is interesting. It does feel more trend driven than a lot of stuff, and I think there's several reasons to that. One is it is a fun there's a fun recreational lifestyle aspect to being a gun owner. Even if you got into it specifically for self-defense, specifically for home defense, it is still fun. Or even if you're just doing it for fun, you know that there is a defense component to it. And that defense component, I think they're both equally trend driven. You'll shoot a friend's lever gun, you'll be like, oh, I need one of these. But even the defense side is kind of interesting too. Like there will be a very widely talked about self-defense scenario, and people will be like, oh man, it's a good thing he had a light on his gun. Oh, now I need to get one. Or it's a good thing that this, or it's a good thing that that. So it is really interesting how there's so much in this space that cannot be fully tested or tried because it is either combat or defense or just like very narrow circumstance focused. And so people will move from one trend to the other based on this shooter or that shooter or this defense scenario. And then on the fun side, it's just like, what's fun? Like, well, I don't have a lever gun and my friend does, and it was fun and I'm getting one next, So I think that drives the trends back and forth from both sides. So it's interesting. Yeah. It's a very interesting space. And then there's a fashion component too. Different camouflages have different seasons that you wear them in. So, yeah.
Yeah, everything was FDE for quite a while, and now I think we're shifting back into some of the ODE, which was a little bit before that. And then, I don't know, now everybody's just putting random stuff. What's that Volkswagen that they have that has like every panel's a different color? I've seen a couple of guns where they do that too.
Yeah, and I've done that, but usually by accident. It's usually not on purpose. It's just like, oh, not a single piece of FDE on this gun is the same. Oh, interesting. Yeah. So, well, I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for the work that you've been doing, and my hope is now that you're more in the public eye than you were before, but just that being publicly traded as well as being publicly talked about, you'll have some good observations, and you'll also have some opportunities for really good impact. So keep us posted if there's stuff that we can do to help you on either of those fronts. But before you go, is there you've been here for 15 years. Is there any story that you kind of want to end with? Is there anything, because over 15 years, I'm sure business has been up and down. I'm sure that there's been good times, hard times. Sure, I know that it's been a long road to this point. What's a really encouraging story where you're like, yeah, we're on the right track? Like, is there a thing that happened along the road that just kind of sticks out to you as an encouraging point that you would want to share with people?
I mean, this industry is a very small industry, so I think it's very relationship driven. So I'm very thankful for the relationships that we've made along the 15 years. That ultimately, we had a really good relationship that brought us to, with Dusty, who's our board member of mine, to actually meeting the SPAC sponsor team that got us to where we were. So, we were a business that was growing. We've spent 15 years doing what we've done. We've grown organically, but now the opportunity that we have ahead of us is all because of these relationships that we have. Mm-hmm. And now we can massively expand and grow much more rapidly than we have over the last 15 years. And so it's crazy, like adding gasoline to the fire, but you were never expecting it really to happen. Again, because of the relationships that we've had, we're now where we are today, and we have that war chest, and we have a good head on our shoulders, and a lot of people, customers and shareholders that believe in what we're doing. And like I mentioned before, we're at war with some of these other people who don't believe in what we all believe in. And the way around that is, buy more guns, buy more stock. And really, just to be clear, I'm not giving any sort of investment advice here or telling anybody what to do with their money.
All right, you're not allowed to give investment advice anymore,
Yeah, what we're building, what we believe in, and where we think we're headed. So obviously people should make their own decisions, especially when it comes to the money and the market. we're very proud of ourselves and what we've accomplished thus far, and really looking forward to what we have ahead of ours.
Yeah. Very good. Well, I'm definitely a rising tide lifts all ships kind of person in my mentality. So I'm really happy to see that there is so much interest around what you guys are doing. It's extremely exciting, and I'm really eager. And I would echo what you said. The gun industry is very small. It can be very dramatic at times, but there are some fantastic relationships. Every time I go to SHOT Show, I hate Las Vegas even more, but every time I go to SHOT Show, I spend more time, I make more relationships with people that I really want to see again next year. So it has been for me, it's been about 10 years. It's been a slightly shorter run than you, but it's been a fantastic experience to be more plugged into the firearm industry and build some of those relationships. So thank you so much for coming on the show. It's mutual friends that have connected us together. So yeah, a lot of fascinating people working in this space of software and kind of modernizing the firearm industry, making it more, I was going to say culturally relevant, but that's not actually the right term. Weapons are always culturally relevant. In fact, cultures get built because of weapons, not the other way around. But using better software tools and more modern stuff to make talking about weapons more effective. So yeah, it's cool to see a lot of the stuff that's going on, and I want to thank you, Mark, for giving us so much of your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It was a great time.
Very good. Well, enjoy the next few weeks of reading overblown media coverage of your company. I'm sure it's a blast.
I try to avoid it as much as possible, but you got to. So
yeah, that's wise. Yeah.
Yeah.